Day 2 of spring ball for Colorado. No Carl Durrell or coaches today, but we got a chance to interview some players. We both talked to Terrence Lang, both talked to Eric Olson. Who else did you talk to, Brian?
I got Alex Fontenot today. His journey's been interesting. He was here before Jarek Broussard really got going, and now Jarek's gone, and he's still the guy here, or at least one of the guys. So kind of interesting, his journey. He's almost been that guy that, he has to keep proving himself every year that, hey, I'm still here, and I'm still a pretty good running back. And so he's got that chip on his shoulder.
That running backs group has got talent. It's a little thin. You've got Deion Smith there, Jay Lee Stacks as well. Ramon Jefferson's really going to bolster that group when he comes in this summer.
Yeah.
That's a position where guys get banged up a little bit. You concerned with the depth there at all?
Yeah, I think I am. Alex was not. He said he thinks, hey, he goes, the three we have right now, he goes, I think we can be pretty good with just the three we have. He did say, I asked him about the walk-ons, and he said, don't sleep on those guys because they're walk-ons. He said, they're pretty good too, and they're getting their reps in this spring. So he likes the group. He doesn't know much about Ramon Jefferson coming in, but I think obviously we know from watching Ramon, he's going to be adding something to this room. So I think he'd like to have one other scholarship back. I think it makes me nervous going into the season with 4, but I think if they stay healthy, which that's a big if with running back, I like the group.
And they do have Anthony Hankerson from Florida committed. Yeah. If something did, you don't want to see it happen, obviously, but if something did happen to one of those running backs, they could theoretically bring him in this summer as well. Terrence Lang has had quite the journey. When he starts his camp here in August, it's going to be his 6th preseason with the Buffaloes. Obviously redshirted, and then eligibility didn't count against him in 2020. He was talking to me about how much he's matured while he's been here, and I know he hasn't elevated himself to being in the all-conference discussion quite yet, but he feels like this might be the year, not only because of that experience that he's gained over time, but they're going to go more of a 4-down look this year, and so he's going to have an opportunity to make more plays, and I think maybe that's a little bit of a misnomer. Don't get me wrong, he should have been more consistent given his body type and how much talent he does have in recent years, but many times he was asked to take on blockers and kind of let those linebackers be the star of the show.
Yeah, and I will say when you mention his maturity, that's one guy that, as far as interviews, he's a much different interview now than he was when he first got here. I mean, very quiet when he first got here, more outspoken, and I've always enjoyed talking to Terrence, but he's been a fun one to watch grow, throughout his career. But I agree with you. He's excited about the 4-3 and being able to be out more on the edge. The biggest thing I asked him, what do you want to improve from last year? He said production. Because I just want more, tackles for loss, more sacks, things like that. He felt like he left a lot of those plays on the field last year, which, if you watch it, he probably did. But you're right. He was asked to take on some big guys that, maybe he won't this year, that he can make those plays. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he does in this defense this year.
Obviously, he's the elder statesman in that defensive line group, so I was asking him about other guys, and of course he brought up Naeem Rodman and said that he's really transitioned from being a younger guy to now he's also a veteran presence in that room. And he mentioned a guy that we heard a little bit of last summer that didn't play a whole lot, and that's Ryan Williams. He said that he's really come on as a player. Again, that's a name we've been kind of hearing some buzz about. I'm interested to see exactly how that manifests itself for him this season.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited about Ryan as well. I remember at Pac-12 Media Day in L.A., Nate Lamon and Carl Durrell were both raving about Ryan and just kind of the impression he was making so far in his first summer. He didn't play a whole lot, so I'm looking forward to seeing what he does there. He mentioned Naeem to me as well, and just saying that guy's a beast. And he mentioned, Terrence mentioned some of the edge guys. Chance Main has made a good impression on him so far. And then he mentioned those guys that we label as outside linebackers, but Guy Thomas and Devin Grant, guys like that they're with a different position coach, but kind of doing the same thing. And he said that entire group looks pretty good. So
I asked him, do you miss Chris Wilson at all now that he's, coaching those edge guys? He goes, no, Chris is constantly there with us still. He hasn't left his roots as a defensive line coach completely behind. He's still very much involved there. Yeah. Eric Olson was mentioned by Carl Durrell after the first practice, said he had a bunch of catches. And Eric Olson said that the tight end is a very focal point of this offense. He said that during 7-on-7 and team periods, they've caught pretty much half the balls through 2 practices.
Yeah, and boy, he looks the part, doesn't he? He is a big tight end, and does not look like he's a redshirt freshman. And he had a tough year last year. I mean, you're coming from being, I think he was the highest rated recruit in the class. He had a lot of pressure on him. He said that he needed to perform. He didn't perform. He wasn't out there last year, and a lot of it was because you're a freshman and you're trying to to learn. He said it was frustrating at the time, but as he looks back at it, a redshirt year was probably a good thing for him. He's learned a lot. He's loved learning from Brady Russell, Matt Lynch, guys like that. And what he told me is, I said, what's the biggest thing you learned this last year? He said, the biggest thing I learned was the tight end is the most badass position on the field. And so you love to hear that. I mean, he just loves what that position does in this offense, and how they can, they're called upon to block. He goes, you got to run 50 yards down the field, things like that. So he's a guy that I'm looking forward to this year and in the future. I think that tight end group has got a lot of potential.
When he committed to CU, I remember one of his 7-on-7 coaches was convinced that he was going to grow into be an offensive tackle, and I just happened to bring that up to Eric. Is tight end definitely the future here? And yeah, he has no interest in being an offensive lineman. He likes where he's at, kind of in that 250-pound range. Mm-hmm. And behind Brady Russell, there is an opportunity for one of those four freshmen. They're not all the same in terms of the number of years they've been here, but there's four guys in terms of eligibility that are freshmen, and so some different guys. Austin Smith is a guy that came in late last year that I've heard some good things about, that has pretty good speed for his size.
Yeah, and Caleb Fourier was a guy that I thought was impressive in some of the open practices we got to see last year. Last spring he made an impression. Eric did not, last spring, because he actually got COVID, and so he was out a lot of spring because he was sick with COVID. So that kind of hampered his first year here as well. But we got to see Caleb. I like that young tight end group. I think it's going to be fun to watch.
And Eric Olson's a mechanical engineering major. He's already declared that. So got a bright future on the football field. Looks like a bright future in life as well.
He's probably already smarter than both of us.
I think that's pretty much a certainty. Right. Well, that's day 2 of spring ball. We'll be back on Saturday with more analysis.